Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
If you're an alien, why do you sound like you're from the North? Lots of planets have a North.
Okay. Welcome to episode 157 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 157. I'm Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, and the nerd and the murd. All right. Zig, why don't you take us over with the nerdery side of the house?
Today we're going to talk about the Ninth Doctor, the incarnation of Doctor Who, the protagonist of the British science fiction television series Doctor Who. It was portrayed by Christopher Eccleston during the first series of the show's revival in 2005.
This is really my start with the Doctor, because I have seen some of the older ones, like I'd said in the past, I just couldn't stay with them. I found it a little hard to stay with them, especially because some episodes would go an hour, some would go 3, and it was just really hard to stay with it. This was my really first big dive into the Doctor, into Doctor Who, that is.
I loved Christopher Eccleston coming back as the Doctor. I'd seen him in a whole bunch of other stuff. He was mostly an indie guy, so I've seen him in a lot of really great stuff. And when they said he was going to be the Doctor, I was like, oh, that's a really interesting choice. What's funny is he shows up in a dark, I actually think it was dark purple sweater, what they would call a jumper, and a long or a thigh length black leather jacket, which is what Colin Baker wanted to wear as the Doctor, but they wouldn't let him.
Hmm.
With short cropped hair too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But apparently someone kept that idea around because that's what they put Chris Eccleston in, and it worked. Within the series narrative, the Doctor is a centuries-old alien Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey who travels in time and space in a TARDIS, frequently with companions. Eccleston's incarnation of the Doctor is a war-torn loner who is more pragmatic and less eccentric than his previous selves. Fiercely determined to protect the innocent at all cost, and prone to using humor to mask the trauma he suffered as a result of the Time War. To fit in with a 21st century audience, the Doctor was given a primary companion, Rose Tyler, played by Billie Piper, who was designed to be just as independent and courageous as the Doctor. The Doctor and Rose had briefly traveled with Adam Mitchell, played by Bruno Langley, and are later joined by Captain Jack Harkness, played by John Barrowman, a reformed con man from the 51st century. The Doctor, Rose, and Jack form a close team, but are separated in the series finale, in which each character has to make difficult choices and face a sacrifice.
So, with this one really being the first one that I really not only dove into but stayed with, and I can't remember if all of them from this point going forward had this, but I'm curious if it happened before. But starting with him, granted, each episode is episodic and they're
Yeah.
mostly standalone. But starting with him, it seemed there was an overarching bad villain somewhere.
In every season.
It was this started with him?
Yes.
Okay, because with him it was Big Bad Wolf.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a gnat in here. I still don't get it. Yeah, okay, so they had done it previously, going back to the 70s and then the 80s. Every once in a while they'd have like an overall season story arc.
Mm-hmm.
But they'd only do it for like one season, and then a couple of regular seasons, and they do another one with an overall story arc. This is basically the first time they just decided to do that for everyone. There's a big bad in every one of these series going forward that they have to deal with.
And don't misunderstand me. The episodes themselves don't necessarily deal with the big bad, but there's a reference to the big bad in almost every episode that culminates into a final episode.
Yes. There's always a lead up, which I think is what makes this series so captivating. The Ninth Doctor, of course, he first appeared in the episode Rose, where he rescues a 19-year-old shop worker, Rose Tyler, from an Auton attack. And the Autons go all the way back to the early 70s. After Rose helped the Doctor defeat the Nestine consciousness, which is what controls the Autons, he invites her to travel with him in the TARDIS. On their first trip to the end of the world, the Doctor takes Rose to witness the destruction of the planet Earth in the year 5 billion. It is revealed that the Doctor's own species, the Time Lords, have been destroyed, and the Doctor is the last of his kind. Following from this, they visit Cardiff in 1869, where they encounter author Charles Dickens. The Doctor claims to be a big fan. When faced with a near-death situation, the Doctor tells Rose that he was glad to have met her. In Aliens of London, when taking Rose home, the Doctor accidentally returns to Earth a year after they left. Because of his actions, he is treated like an internet predator by Rose's mother, Jackie, played by Camille Cordery. Brilliantly by Camille Cordery. I really love her in that. And Rose's boyfriend, Mickey Noel Clark, who was Rose's primary murder suspect. After Mickey helps the Doctor and Rose defeat the Slitheen by firing a missile at their base at 10 Downing Street in World War III, the Doctor offers to take Mickey along, but he doesn't want to go. In the episode Dalek, the Doctor encounters a Dalek, though he believes the race to be extinct at the end of the Time War, and Rose wakes it up. Adam Mitchell joins the Doctor and Rose as companion at the end of the Dalek. However, when he tries to smuggle future knowledge from Satellite 5 in the year 200,000 back to his own time, in the long game, the Doctor expels him from the TARDIS. The Doctor's angry at Rose after he takes her to the events of her father Pete Tyler's death, and she saves his life, causing a paradox at Father's Day. And then they go back to World War II Britain, in the Empty Child, where they meet Captain Jack Harkness. There's a lot of other different ones. So when they brought Doctor Who back, they had to make a few promises. First off, they made a deal with TV Cymru, which is BBC Wales, which is where they make Doctor Who now. They stopped making it in London. And they made the deal with BBC One and then BBC Wales, or TV Cymru, to make the show in Wales, to cut some of the cost, to bring it back, because they knew they didn't want to just bring it back and it not be great. Russell T Davies had been pushing to bring back Doctor Who for a decade at least. And he picked Christopher Eccleston because of his acting chops. Christopher Eccleston's a pretty damn good actor. The only problem was when Christopher Eccleston came on board and they were making the show, he was really unhappy with how it was playing out. No one's really ever truly said why. I mean, there's some rumors out there, but Eccleston was really unhappy with the whole process and didn't like basically working for the BBC. So at the end of the series, he regenerated into a new Doctor, played by David Tennant, the 10th Doctor.
I had heard he was worried about being typecast.
Yeah, I'd heard that. I heard there was an incident where Jack Harkness, or John Barrowman, exposed himself to the cast. But I mean, they both said yes, he did, and no, that wasn't the reason why he left. It's a lot of stuff. He was really unhappy with the way BBC had done stuff. He has since finally come back and done the Big Finish audio stuff, and he's perfectly happy to do that. And I'm glad he did. Because there is some good audio stuff. Again, the stuff that Big Finish Audio is doing is incredible. If you want to listen to Doctor Who instead of watching it, and sometimes that's quite lovely, go out and check out some of the Big Finish Audio stuff. It's amazing. It's not terribly expensive. They will make you a deal. You can get 2 or 3 for, a few bucks or pounds, depending on where you are when you're listening. But it's really good stuff, and it's nice to listen to and hear it. When they came back, they brought a lot of gravitas with them, and I think that's why Russell T Davies wanted to pick Chris Eccleston, and then he lightened it up with David Tennant, which is it kind of needed it at that point. I really enjoyed Chris Eccleston's work in the series. I wish he had done a little more, but I also understand that the way it shook out actually was probably better for Doctor Who, because it brought people directly into the idea of regeneration, which they didn't really, the best way to do that is just to throw them in and watch the process, watch how it happens. So I kind of agree. What are your thoughts on that?
Chris Eccleston is one of my favorites. I loved it. I'm sorry it only got a year.
Yeah. I kind of wished it went a little longer.
I do
but again,
too.
I am glad that he did a regeneration fairly quickly, because again, it gave everybody a lot of, because that's just part of the Doctor Who fandom, going all the way back to 1960. I think was
Hmm.
the first regeneration. Yeah, 66. Um,
Well,
that we just
and
get used to.
and and the thing about this version, this Doctor Chris Eccleston, he really brought it more mainstream,
Yes, he did.
and I think took the Doctor Who franchise to a new popularity level. Um,
That it has maintained.
that is maintained, and you didn't have that before. You had your diehard Doctor Who fans like yourself that went back, you know, decades, um, before this, but this really brought it more mainstream,
Mhm,
and more people were watching than ever before of Doctor
mhm.
Who. Doctor Who is in the conversation more than it ever was before. It brought it modern. It brought it with better special effects,
Yes,
better
it did.
better writing, um, better storylines, and this is the kickoff to the new Who,
Mhm,
and was brilliant.
mhm.
And that's, like I said, this is where my start was, where I got really hooked on it and continued watching from then on out.
Yep, yep. It is amazing. Now for the 50th anniversary, they wrote in the character of the War Doctor because they were pretty sure that Chris Eccleston wouldn't come back for that show, and they were correct. They did approach him, and he was just not interested. Um, uh, so they created the character of the War Doctor as John Hurt, and they did show a scene because they did have likeness rights from Chris Eccleston as the Doctor in his regeneration scene. So what they did was they regenerated the War Doctor into the Chris Eccleston Doctor at the end of that, which tied it all together. And again, I would have liked to have seen Chris Eccleston in it, but for what it did for the mythos of Doctor Who in creating that extra doctor that we knew nothing about, the War Doctor, um, I think it was beneficial to Doctor Who. I would like to see Christopher Eccleston come back in future, multi-doctor stories.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if he's not amenable to that now. Again, he's been doing the Big Finish audio stuff, and he's pretty happy doing that. Um, he did not want to put on a Southern accent. He wanted to keep his own Northern accent, which is what I alluded to in the opening. That's the first thing that Rose says to him, after they finish running. Hi, I'm the doctor. Hi, I'm Rose Tyler. Oh, good to meet you, Rose Tyler. Now run. And then the first thing she says is, wait a minute. If you're an alien, why do you sound like you're from the North? And he's like, lots of planets have a North,
Hmm.
which is it's the most Christopher Eccleston thing you can say. Um, and they really deal with some deep issues. The stuff with the empty child, there's some dark undertones there.
Yeah.
And the same with the Doctor Dances, Boomtown, Bad Wolf, and the Parting of the Ways. Um, just amazing, amazing stuff. Russell T Davis really did his homework on this. Um, they also in the new series Adventures, the Ninth Doctor is in the first six Doctor Who hardbacks of the new series Adventures uh, novels, which they tie into the first series and the revamp of the show. The first three of these novels, The Clockwise Man, The Monster Inside, and Winter Takes All, were published on 19th of May 2005 and features solely the Doctor and Rose. So you do get a couple of more Rose and the Doctor episodes. Um, so it is kind of nice. Again, I would like to see him a little more. Um, but I like the way it went, and I like the way that Christopher Eccleston portrayed him. But I think that darkness might have overshadowed the series. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
They
I've been seeing. I never really thought that.
I don't know. I didn't think it ever overshadowed it. Like I said, I liked him as the Doctor. He was
Oh
a
yeah.
favorite of mine, and I hated him going away after a year.
Hmm.
Um, not knowing much about David Tennant outside of um, his appearance in a Harry Potter movie.
Hmm.
I didn't know what to expect about David Tennant,
Yeah.
and I was really enjoying Chris Eccleston. So I was very trepidatious. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yes.
Going into David Tennant because I thought Eccleston was brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. But I agree. Christopher Eccleston was brilliant. Um, going back before that, so of course they did the film. We talked about that the film in 1996, but it did not lead to a series. And over 6 weeks in 2003, the BBC posted an animated series called Scream of Shalka on the BBC site. This was originally developed as an official continuation to the series and featured Richard E. Grant in the role of the Doctor. In promoting the online serial, Grant was referred to as the official Ninth Doctor by the BBC. However, following that September of 2003 announcement that the series would return to television with a new actor in the title role, the canonical status of the so-called Shalka Doctor was left in doubt. Christopher Eccleston's casting as the Ninth Doctor was announced on the 22nd of March 2004. He was the production team's first choice for the character. Other actors linked to the role include Bill Nighy, Richard E. Grant, Anthony Head, Eddie Izzard, Hugh Grant, and Alan Davis.
I would love to see Eddie Izzard as a Doctor.
Me too. Um, they do this every time. They'll be like, okay, there's a lot of people we're considering, and they'll throw a bunch of names out there. So you're not really sure who they actually pick, so they can make it a surprise.
Well, and the
They've been
internet and
doing
the
that
internet
since
goes
the
and the internet
70s.
goes crazy with that too.
Um, oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Nuts. Nuts. I've been keeping up with this stuff. There was an official before the internet, there was an official Doctor Who magazine which stayed in production even though the show didn't. And yeah, stuff like this all the time. That's basically what they wrote about through all of the 90s.
Hmm.
Um, BBC Controller Drama committed stated the announcement of this casting an actor to the 21st century. Um, I agree. Again, I think you're right. I love the casting. Again, I am glad that he left early, but I wish he would have done at least 2 seasons. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Because yeah, yeah. I would have more from him, or maybe a longer first season. Say that is correct. Um, Eccleston was scared of being cast. Um, but they also admitted that this was made without consulting the actor and were forced to apologize for it. So, um, Christopher Eccleston said he wasn't comfortable. I thought if I stay in this job, I'm going to have to blind myself to certain things that I thought were wrong. And I think it's more important to be your own man than be successful. So I left. But the most important thing is that I did it, and not that I left like because it, and I'm very proud of that. I wouldn't necessarily. Again, I'm with you. I would have liked to have seen more, but I think for the overall story, him leaving pretty early on was not necessarily a bad thing, and it wasn't planned. Um, but shout out to Christopher Eccleston for seeing that and being correct about it. And really, he was. David Tennant took over and inhabited that role for a good 7, 8 years, even though he only did 3 seasons. Technically 4, because his last season was broken up into a bunch of movies after the initial season. I want to say he did a full 4, possibly even 5 seasons worth of material. And then, um, everybody after that has been phenomenal. Even though with Jodie Whittaker, some of the writing was not the best. Jodie Whittaker herself was incredible in that role.
Hmm.
I say that there were a couple of episodes of the Jodie Whittaker uh, era that were incredibly. The Rosa Parks episode was incredibly well written. Um, the episode that takes place during the division of India, I can't remember that one. The Demons of something. Oh my God, that one was incredible too. Those are just off the top of my head. But yeah, I'm really glad they brought it back, and I was a really big fan and a proponent. Um, it was out quite a bit before we could get it over here, and then Sci-Fi agreed to show it. But for them to agree, props to Sci-Fi at the time. Them to agree to show it, the deal was they would show it, and after they had showed it for a year, PBS would be able to show it. So they did. It was actually on PBS for the first few years of its existence. And then, BBC America took over here, and then HBO, and now Disney.
Hmm.
And we just got an episode a few days ago. It was incredible. Centered on the companion, which is really the first time they ever did that was with Chris Eccleston, where they centered an episode on the companion, which I like. I don't like a whole season's worth of it, but an episode a season that's centered on the companion, I think that's great. Because the companions in the old series, their job was to be the point of view of the audience, to run, to get rescued, to ask, "What is it, doctor?" And as Louise Jameson Leela famously said, there are only so many ways you can say, "What is it, doctor? What is it, doctor? What is it, doctor?" So it was a little less of that. They were a little more outspoken when the new series came to fruition, which is a good thing. It needed to mature. I mean, it's okay. It doesn't take away from the series. But yeah, that's about it for the Ninth Doctor, other than get out and check it out, guys. Chris Eccleston brought gravitas to this series, and he brought it back from death. And we should all be thankful for him and Russell T Davis and the rest of the cast, Billy Piper, for just being present and in the moment for it, because they knew what was coming. They
Hmm.
knew it was going to be a hit because of the quality of the stuff they were making. They knew that the English were insane for it, because they were. But so were the Canadians. So were the Americans, strangely enough, which is odd, because this show never really, it has a small audience, or had a small
Had.
audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not anymore.
No.
It's mainstream entertainment now,
Sure.
which
Well, and the fact that HBO bought it
Mhm.
and now Disney has bought it really tells you how big it's become, because
Yeah.
those are two big companies,
yes, they are.
and to bring that into their fold shows the popularity that it has become. And I said it throughout this episode, and I'll say it again here. Chris Eccleston was a big part of that, of
Yes.
bringing it into that mainstream fold and making Doctor Who as big as it is now.
Yes.
So cool. Well, thank you for taking us on another journey with yet another Doctor, and we got
Thank you, sir.
more of those to come.
Yes. The next one will be 10. We'll be talking about David
Tennant. Yeah.
or as Billy Piper liked to call him, David 10-inch, because it made him giggle.
Awesome. Well, with that, we'll step over to the murder side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off NBC News, WPSD News, Medium, and the Bring Samantha Home Facebook page. And it's been a while, I think, since I've done one of these, but this is about the disappearance of Samantha Speery.
The Disappearance of Samantha Speery.
Yep. So Samantha Speery's friends and family will tell you that she gave the best hug. She was just a hugger. She's also described as athletic and stubborn and a girl who had a penchant for cheesecake. Her favorite television show was the sitcom Roseanne, and she loved her friends and family, and everybody loved her. She grew up in rural Kentucky, which did have its challenges. As a young adult, Samantha did some dabbling into drugs.
Mm-hmm.
She was back and forth with it, but her family had high hopes she would beat it. By the time she was 19 years old, she was out of rehab and had stayed sober for 6 years.
Wow, she got into drugs young.
Oh, yes, very young, very, very young. In 2018, Samantha was living in Murray, Kentucky, and she was also dating a man named Ren Henderson, something that her friends and family were less than thrilled about. At this time, however, Samantha was 25 years old and she had to make her own choices. It is worth noting that she was also the mother to 2 young children. On March 27th, Samantha and her boyfriend Ren argued. They were at Ren's father's house in Kaler, Kentucky, and Ren stormed off, got into Samantha's car, and left, leaving Samantha at the home with his father, Dusty. Dusty said he saw Samantha go off into the woods, and then Dusty followed behind her on an ATV, and that was the last time he said he saw Samantha. That was actually the last day that anyone saw or heard from Samantha because she vanished. So she was born on August 20th, 1992. She grew up again in rural Kentucky with her close-knit family. She was very
Rural
likable.
Kentucky, is this in Appalachia? Not all of Kentucky is in Appalachia.
I'd have to look at a map.
Okay.
I don't know. It is.
Just a question.
I think it's in, if I remember right, it's southern Kentucky. Oh, I'm really trying to remember. I'm not sure. I'm not great with geography, so don't hold me to that. She was considered very likable. She was outgoing, friendly, and athletic. Also described as stubborn. She did go back and forth in the drug scene while as a teenager until she finally went to rehab when she was 19, as we had talked about.
Mm-hmm.
During this time, Samantha married and became a mom to 2 children. Samantha and her husband would separate, and Samantha would fall back into the drug scene. Don't know if it was because of the separation or a result of the separation, but because of her actions, she would lose the custody of her 2 kids. But her family and friends still maintained hope, as many do. After her separation, she contacted an old friend, Ren Hendrickson, who through Facebook, and soon Samantha and Ren began dating and became inseparable. Ren's family had a reputation in the area. Many of them had a long rap sheet, including charges of drugs, including possession, distribution, and manufacturing. And many of them also had several charges of burglary and theft. So her family was very, very worried about her. During this time, while she was living in Murray, she was with Ren most of the time. Her family was working towards getting her back into rehab, but she was resisting, but they weren't giving up. On March 27th, 2018, Samantha and Ren went over to his father's house on Tim Road in Simpsonia, Kentucky. Ren's father, Dusty, was also well known to law enforcement. There was an alleged argument between Ren and Samantha, and then Ren left the house, again taking Samantha's car. And it was then said that Samantha took off into the woods surrounding the home, and Dusty followed her on the ATV. And these accounts these accounts and timeline are what are provided by Dusty, by the way.
Yeah.
What Dusty alleges is that he found Samantha and she got on the 4-wheeler with him. They rode until they ran out of gas. And because this was supposedly late at night, both Samantha and Dusty decided to sleep in the woods next to the ATV to stay warm. Dusty said he kept the ATV running as long as he could, and then he attempted to make a fire. In the morning, just after daybreak, he stated that they started walking back towards the road. When they reached the Highway 131, they split up. Dusty said Samantha wanted to walk towards her cousin's home nearby, while he wanted to walk to a store to warm up and get something to eat. So Dusty said he went in one direction, she went in another. Highway 131, by the way, is a main highway, which is extremely well traveled.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Samantha's family had tried to reach Samantha on and off all day. Despite their disapproval of her drug activity, they were still a very close family and and Samantha always stayed in contact with them. By that evening on the night of March 28th, Samantha's mother, Tina, called Samantha's place of employment in a desperate attempt to talk to her daughter. And they told her that Samantha was no call, no show for her shift at McDonald's that day, and this had never happened before. So her mother got panicked. The next day, on March 29th, Tina called the Graves County Sheriff's Department to report her daughter was missing, and they took the call that she was missing again on March 29th, but they declined to do anything about it, saying that because Samantha was just a drug addict out on a binge. Samantha's mom insisted this was not the case and their daughter might be in danger, but they didn't do anything. Interestingly, the evening before, again on March 28th, Wren had also been reported as missing. His mother called 911 that evening after she received a disturbing FaceTime call from her son. He said that he had taken a bunch of pills and was going off into the woods to die. He told her he was on the side near Dooms Chapel Road, and by this time Samantha was already missing, but no one had known this for certain yet. The authorities took the report on Wren, but they didn't go to look for him that night. They knew his reputation in the area, and they had no interest in finding him in the dark if he had gone missing. So they would wait to search for both Wren and Samantha until March 30th, so 2 days. 2 days after Wren was reported missing and 1 full day after Samantha was reported missing. That day, the police did post on Facebook to say that an investigation was underway to locate both of them. Police did obtain the story from Dusty about what happened on the night of the 27th and the morning of the 28th. He again stated that Samantha and Wren had a fight and that Wren had left in Samantha's car. He then told the story of how he and Samantha ended up in the woods. Detectives did go out searching the wooded area for clues. They were looking for both Samantha and Wren and the ATV that had broken down, but they were really looking for anything. Mm-hmm. They didn't find Samantha or Wren, but they did find the four-wheeler. And interestingly, they noticed there was only one set of footprints around the ATV and leading from it towards Highway 131.
Was it out of gas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
They did notice the campfire that was nearby. And okay. Dusty had told him that he tried to get a fire going, but everything was wet that he couldn't. They did a search through the campfire remnants, and they found 2 partially burned cell phones, which immediately alarmed authorities. Both of the cell phones registered back to Dusty. And this area, known as Kaler Bottoms, was a swampy, wet area, especially late in March. And Dusty told them that they started walking back towards home as daylight broke. However, there were no signs that Samantha had been there with him. So Dusty's story was being called into question.
Yeah.
And more red flags would raise when they searched Samantha's home in Murray. They searched her home on the 30th, and they found bloody clothes and blood on the ceiling, but there's been no further details released on this blood. Samantha's car was
blood on the ceiling, like arterial spray.
They do not say. They give no further details on this blood.
Bloody clothing and blood on the ceiling.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, I'm with you. Sorry, please continue.
This is a wild one. Samantha's car was also found abandoned near Dooms Chapel Road, and that's where Wren said he was when he FaceTimed his mom.
Yeah.
On April 1st, authorities searched Kaler Bottoms again, and on this day, Wren would walk out of the woods and then be taken to the hospital. He was dehydrated, but otherwise okay. He had been missing for 5 days at this point.
Okay.
Wren's story of what happened on the 27th and 28th were a little bit different than Dusty's. He said that on the 27th, he took the car and went to Murray. He doesn't mention that they fought, but does admit to using drugs that day. Mm-hmm. He said he left Samantha at the house with Dusty, and when he returned on the 28th, Dusty told him that Samantha was missing. When he heard this, he said he was upset, and he drove off, calling his mom during this time, and then the car would be abandoned on Dooms Chapel Road. So the story kind of really takes a lot of twists and turns. Let me kind of recap. Let me kind of recap where we are.
Thank you.
On March 27th, Ren and Samantha are at Dusty Holder's house on Tim Road in Simonia.
Okay, that's the one thing that everyone can agree on.
That's the one thing everybody can agree on.
Okay.
Ren leaves to go back to Murray, taking Samantha's car, but leaving her with Dusty.
Okay.
That evening, Dusty says he and Samantha spent the night in the woods.
Okay.
On March 28th, Dusty and Samantha, according to Dusty anyway, walked out of the woods they spent the night in, leaving their ATV, which was out of gas.
Mm-hmm.
When they reached Highway 31, Samantha wanted to go one way, Dusty wanted to go another, so they split up.
Okay.
Samantha does not take any calls from her friends or family that day and doesn't show up for a scheduled shift at work, which is something that never happened before.
Mm-hmm.
Ren then returns to his father's house, asks where Samantha is.
Mm-hmm.
Dusty tells him Samantha is missing. Ren panics and drives off, calling his mother on FaceTime. He tells his mom he swallowed a bunch of pills and he's going to walk off into the woods to die.
Mm-hmm.
Ren's mother calls 911. They decide to wait to search for Ren.
Mm-hmm.
The next day, Samantha's family called police, but it won't be until the 30th that the actual search for Samantha and Ren would take place.
Mm-hmm.
The ATV is found, remnants of a campfire, but other than that, there's no evidence to support Dusty's story of Samantha being there with him.
Mm-hmm.
This is also the same day they search Samantha's home, and there was allegedly bloody clothes found and some blood on the ceiling,
Mm-hmm.
which authorities have declined to say anything on.
Uh-huh.
And on April 1st, just after Samantha's car is found abandoned on Dooms Chapel Road, Ren walks out of the woods and is taken to the hospital. He's dehydrated, but otherwise okay.
Okay.
So we're there.
Got it.
So Ren's story differs slightly from his father's, but there's still no clues to Samantha's whereabouts. There were some questionable clues found at this investigation site, such as the one set of footprints,
Mm-hmm.
the blood in Samantha's phone, the cell phones that were registered to Dusty, and then the mismatched story details between Ren and Dusty. Chief Deputy Sheriff Ramage told Dateline that police have questioned Ren and Dusty multiple times about Samantha's disappearance and said both men passed polygraph tests on the subject. But, you can always say about polygraphs. Searches continued around Simpsonia with a focus around Kaler Bottoms, but law enforcement began to wonder if she was even there that day. Her official missing date also varies depending on which file you read. Technically, Dusty claims to have seen her on the morning of March 28th, but many consider her missing on the 27th, which was the last time anyone say they had actually saw her. On April 2nd, the search for Samantha took authorities to an area near Dooms Chapel Road and Bell Road when the canines led them to a certain location. Here, they found an underground bunker, and inside the bunker was 41-year-old Ernest Hendrickson. I don't know if he's related or not. Who was a man authorities had been looking for since November of 2018. He was wanted on several charges, including manufacturing methamphetamines, fleeing and evading authorities, possession of a firearm, several other charges. And he was taken in without incident, but there were no signs of Samantha. Most areas of focus.
Why did the dogs lead them there, though?
For him, no, they picked up a scent.
Oh, it was just
Yeah, they picked up a scent.
Okay.
Most areas of focus for Samantha took place around Graves County in a few different small town area. Here it is. I was right. Southwest. Graves County is specifically located in the southwest corner of Kentucky. I don't know if that's Appalachia or not.
It's not.
The population is just over 36,000 residents in the entire county. The county seat is Mayfield, Kentucky, which some people may sound familiar to. There was a major tornado that hit Mayfield in December of 2021. At first, it was believed Samantha vanished from the Kaler Bottoms area, which is an area of land at around just 1,900 acres, which is owned and managed by the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. It's described as swampy, and statistics show that 91% of Kaler Bottoms is considered swamp or wetlands. And this is the area where Samantha Lee allegedly rode off on the ATV with Dusty. Samantha
Swamp or wetlands can... if you go in and you don't know what you're doing, having grown up around wetlands, it can get dangerous. It's not so much the water, it may be the mud or the critters in the mud
Right.
Because if you get stuck in that, you can't necessarily get out, and
Right.
they may never find you.
Well, this is the area where allegedly Samantha and Dusty walked out of. The only problem is
Mhm.
this was broad daylight just after 7 a.m. And according to Dusty, they were both soaking wet, covered in mud.
Mhm.
And Highway 31, again, is a busy highway, which would have been in the middle of morning rush hour, but no one claims to have seen a wet and muddy young couple walking down the side of the road.
Huh.
Another area of interest is Murray, where Samantha lived, and possibly Wren lived there too. Wren claimed he drove back to Murray that day in Samantha's car, but without Samantha, and didn't return until the following day. There's the odd blood evidence allegedly found in her apartment. And did something happen to Samantha there? Was she never in Kaler Bottoms at all?
Yeah.
Murray, Kentucky is about 30 miles to the Kaler Bottoms, which is a 37-minute drive, according to Google Maps. It's so sparse and rural, there are many hiding areas. There are dense woods, creeks and rivers, and then the swamplands. And then there was that fugitive who was on the run for 5 months, living out there in the wilderness before he was found. If the searches weren't out with Samantha for canines, he might have never been found at all.
No, he'd still be in his little bunker.
To the east of this, about a 30-minute drive, is Kentucky Lake, which covers 160 acres. It's a very popular destination for vacationers and boating enthusiasts. There's really no evidence that Samantha ever left the area of Murray or Kaler Bottoms, but there's no evidence that she's still in Murray or Kaler Bottoms either.
Right on.
Samantha is described as a Caucasian female, about 5'6", and weighing 120 pounds when she was last seen on March 28th. She was 25 years old then and would be 31 today. She has blonde hair and hazel eyes. She also has a few tattoos, including a rose with a skull on her right shoulder, 2 roses and the word rose on the right side of her lower abdomen, and a tiger lily and a sunflower on her left thigh. She was last seen wearing a gray sweatpants and a hoodie. Last believed seen in the area of Simpsonia or Kaler Bottoms, Kentucky, but she was living in Murray. The Graves County Sheriff has not given up hope that investigators will find something new on the case. At this time, the West County Crime Stoppers and family of Samantha Speery are offering a $10,000 reward to the person or persons who provide information to law enforcement, which results in discovering Samantha's location or result in the arrest and conviction of the person or persons involved with her disappearance. And anyone with information on Samantha Speery is asked to contact the Graves County Sheriff's Office at 270-247-4501. And the Bring Samantha Home Facebook page, I've also got that linked in our show notes as well. You can go there and see the outpouring from the public on that. I think if I remember right, the last posting I saw on it was 2022, though. So I'm wondering if people have kind of given up. Let me click on that real quick, because I think that's when I was looking at it, see if it was 2022 or 2021. But there was a lot of outpouring from people on it. No, there's still stuff going on today. I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought it was 2022 or whatnot, but no, there's 2023. And then there's one as late as April 20th. So I may have been thinking something else with that. But anyway, you can see that site, and there's stuff from her parents and stuff from family and friends. Everybody's still very actively looking for her. I don't see that she's ever been declared deceased or anything like that. It's just a really weird one. I personally, I think Dusty's got a big part in this. I don't think Wren did. I just don't. I just don't think that Wren did anything. I think this is all Dusty that's done something. Just to me, everything kind of points to him. But who knows? I'm just an armchair detective. What do I know?
It could be somebody completely out of the scope of investigation. Because look, I don't want to cast aspersions. I say that as I'm gonna, but it sounds like Barney Fife is running the police department down there.
Well, it's another case. We've covered this many times where police are given a missing persons report, but because they're a known drug user, they won't take it seriously, and then we end up with a missing or a murdered person. We've seen this on several occasions.
Just because someone has an addiction doesn't mean they deserve to be murdered.
Well,
I'm
just because
sorry.
someone has an addiction doesn't mean that they're really truly missing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, if
Or in this case, missing.
right. Because we don't know that she's not still alive. We have no idea at this point. This is just one of those where it just boggles my mind that the police just don't seem to take this stuff seriously. I don't know. I'm
Yeah. Bloody clothes and blood on the ceiling at her apartment bothers me.
oh yeah.
It's like, what? What? Are we just not gonna? Okay, I get that tiny little county may not have a whole lot of money, or that tiny little town. The state does,
Yeah. Well, and that's
and you're
where
crossing county lines. That should become a statey problem. Again, I'm not sure how Kentucky
I
law
think
works.
I think it does at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think the blood on the clothes and ceiling, I think, are where the suspicion goes on to Ren, because he did drive
Yeah.
off in her car.
Yep.
Didn't come back till the next day. Is it possible that Dusty and Ren are in this together, and that
Mm-hmm.
Dusty, I don't know. I don't know. It's all very twisted and all very weird. I'm sorry
Yeah.
that the story gets so twisted. It's just
Yeah, no, it's fine. It happens.
just a wild one. Just a wild one. I was
Yeah.
glad I came across this one. I had not heard about this. This is just wild. But
Well, kids, if you see something or saw something, say something.
Yeah.
Go to that website, report her. Her picture's out there. Take a look.
Yeah, on the Bring Samantha Home Facebook page, her picture is all
Yeah.
over it. And then, of course, there's the number I gave for the Graves County
Yeah.
Sheriff's Department if you know anything.
Yeah.
Definitely say something. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
That will take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more information about us on nerderymurdery.com. That's our hub. That's where we have everything related to the show. You can find links to the stuff we talk about, plus pictures. You can also find the link to our YouTube page. It's right on the front, and Zig keeps that updated on a very regular basis.
Thank you. Yeah, I like to make little YouTube playlists and things like that. Plus, we'll release this in connection to some of the playlists as well. Get out there and check it out. Enjoy.
Awesome. Thanks for your work on that.
Thanks for you.
You can also find the link to our merchandise page, where if you wish to show off your Nerdery and Murdery fandom, please do consider doing that. That, along with our patrons, you can find the link to our Patreon. Our patrons and the proceeds from our merchandise do go to the costs that are associated with the show. It does cost to keep us on the air and keep us going, so do please consider one of those two routes to help us out. And if you want to keep hearing the subject matter that you hear now, so please consider that.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our subject matter that may be looking for what we talk about. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.